Hello, here we are once again with Muki Tenembaum. We are exploring, as you know, through these videos, his disillusionism, his misalgic theory, and we are using week after week the news, the events as they happen, uh, as a way of illustrating and triggering philosophical discussions. We'll go back today to a piece of news we have already discussed from a different point of view. It has to do with the AstraZeneca vaccines, the ones developed in Oxford, and their rollout in Europe, and a situation in which these vaccines apparently cause blood clots that may, in some cases, lead to death. And the dilemma this poses for regulators and for people in general, whether to authorize and to take these vaccines that might end up causing blood clots and death, or to suspend their rollout and face the consequence of more death related to COVID-19. So we are there. This debate is ongoing, and incredibly it poses a sort of moral dilemma, an ethical dilemma that is very usual in thought experiments, in philosophical debates, that has to do with the possibility of a train being derailed, causing some death and some damage in order to prevent greater death and greater damage. But this is a thought experiment that, as I said, belongs in philosophical discussions. And now, for a change, we have that precise argument going on in the real world. So we are going to take a look at this and use it for philosophical purposes.
Well, first of all, let me explain that this dilemma, which suddenly becomes serious, becomes real, basically is you have a train is it's on its tracks, and it may kill one person on one side or 6 persons on the other. Unless you change the track, you have 2 choices. There is no time to warn anybody. Either one will die, but it's very young, and 6 which are very old, or it's the doctor. They go back and forth with this thought experiment, and suddenly this thought experiment is real. The person who has to make that decision, in fact, who made the decision already, was the Ministry of Health in the Netherlands. I am not even giving his name, because poor man, he has enough. It's really not his, really, he should not be there. I mean, the problem that for him is unsolvable. And he has 2 choices. It's the AstraZeneca vaccine. If he authorizes the AstraZeneca vaccine, a very small percentage of people will die from this. Apparently, okay. I don't want to be you know, to make it as a fact, but apparently a certain percentage of people, a small one, very small, will die. If he does not allow, if he authorizes the vaccine, that will happen. If he does not authorize the vaccine, we know that hundreds of people will die because they are unvaccinated. For example, in Spain, this is not the Netherlands, but it's a good example, 300,000 people were vaccinated yesterday. These 300,000 people in a couple of weeks will be out of the pool of people who die. If those 300,000 people were not vaccinated, they will still be in the pool. Let's say that 15 people will die out of that group, which is much bigger number than the case we're talking about with the blood clots. It's really, the difference is huge. Still, the Prime Minister decided to stop the vaccination, although the numbers were bigger on this side. But it doesn't matter. Whatever decision he will make, people will die. And this is something that normally in our lives does not happen. We don't get, fortunately, to make those decisions. And this man, I don't think anybody in his position as such. Now, you see, you could always claim there is a third possibility. And this is something that he could have done. He could have said, okay, you know something, I will authorize the vaccine, but I let you know that if you take the vaccine, there is this chance to get a blood clot and die. And if not, there is you will not be immune. and you may die out of corona or spend many weeks in a ward in ICU. Yes. And let him decide. And in fact, even if let's say he has a position, he says that he himself would have taken the vaccine or not, he can say that. But still, leave it to the people to decide. But then there is another part. Let's say he does that. Some people say, listen, I don't understand. You get a salary, you have a car, you have a chauffeur, you have 20 advisors, as many advisors as you want, you have secretaries and everything. I pay you all this, so you make the decision, not me. This is unfair to throw the decision to me. A very similar thing is happening now in Israel, where there are elections for the fourth time, and they're talking about the fifth time because they cannot get a coalition going among the parties. But here we're talking about an election. Here talking, okay, so you have to go again like an idiot and put a piece of a ballot in the box. But here we're talking about lives of people. Okay, so there is a problem when you do that, because if you let the people decide, you are throwing the problem to them. Now, the situation is one that warrants the famous saying, shit happens. There is nothing you can do. There is no good solution. There is no such a thing. Because we are accustomed to watch television, and almost in every show, things end up at the end, somebody does the saving. Yes, somebody saved, and that's it, and it's miracle, and everybody happy, and you go to the next movie theater. Well, this is not a movie. This is life, and sometimes there are not good solutions. Disillusionism is exactly about that. This is the fact. What do you say, Florencio, about all this?
I think this is precisely the case. There's no way of deluding ourselves into thinking that there is a comfortable way out of this situation. But as previous videos have shown, disillusionism is also about sleepwalking, and it's also about going through life without making decisions and going through life avoiding the pains and the hazards and the suffering involved in intentional decision making. So my question is, if the player in the illusion throws this decision to each individual and tells them, hey, it's you who has to decide now. For starters, he's interfering with their ability to sleepwalk and to go through life without that suffering, which, according to the theory we are discussing, is one of the reasons why he was appointed as a player to begin with. And then I think there is another matter that we have not discussed, that is, these people are not used to decision making. They have somehow lost any ability they might have had for decision making. So it would go against sleepwalking and mysalgia, but it would also go against conditioning in a way. So it's a very difficult scenario to consider, the one in which each individual individually decides whether to take the vaccine or not when these are the risks involved, isn't it?
Well, yes. Again, let's remind everybody that we sleepwalk or we do the fast forward. Yes, we live in fast forward because we don't, and under those conditions, we don't suffer. Okay, so we will tend to try to sleepwalk, and all the illusions are there, so we could sleepwalk. They don't exist. We believe they exist, so we can sleepwalk. Now, the whole idea of players is that for a certain price called taxes, yes, they will let you sleepwalk as profoundly as possible. So in the Netherlands, of course, you don't decide who is your doctor. You don't decide to which hospital you go. You don't decide to which school you send your children. You don't decide what your children study in school. And of course, there are little exceptions, you know what I say. You don't decide what day the garbage is being taken out of your street. You don't decide anything. Why? So you can sleepwalk. You don't have to make decisions. But as you say, the muscle used as the virtual muscle, yes, not the real muscle that we use to make decisions is seldom used. You know, and I want to make it clear, it is not a question of decisions of either chocolate or vanilla when I eat my ice cream, yes? I even gave an example in the past. Even who you marry is not really a decision. You're going to marry from a very, very limited pool of persons to which to marry, yes? I think anybody cannot tell how many, let's say, men, know how many women you've dated seriously in your life. What, 20, 30? I mean, the pool is very small anyway. So there is a decision, but it's a small decision. This is a momentous decision. This is a decision in which, in fact, you may not know the results of your decisions. If I get a vaccine, if I get the vaccine and I don't get sick, I don't know if it was because of the vaccine or because I didn't get, there was nobody else to make me sick, or maybe I had immunity in the past. That can also happen, but I don't know. So if I take the vaccine, I will never see the results. I may see the contrary results if I get sick. Yes, and then I don't, and it's not serious. Then I know the vaccine did its job, which is really the most important job. Is not to get the sniffles. Yes, the whole idea is not to end up in a hospital with a tube, you know, inside of your throat. Well, let's be serious about it. But you will never know. On the other hand, if you do take the vaccine and after 2 weeks you don't get a blood clot, you didn't get a blood clot. There you see a result. But the whole idea was not getting a blood clot. You don't take the vaccine so you don't get a blood clot. You get the vaccine in spite of the danger of getting a blood clot, so you will not get sick. It's very interesting. But you see, take Japan, for example. In Japan, people make zero decisions. If at any time they have to make a decision, I have a friend who was there in the middle of a storm, in the middle of there was a big meeting of the how do you call the kids that those kids that have a hat and they are
the Boy
groups
Scouts
all over the world. Boy Scouts, oh really? The Boy Scouts. There was a meeting of Boy Scouts, and there was suddenly an unexpected storm. And the Japanese were nuts. They couldn't do anything. They didn't know what to do because they were not expecting storm in that time of the year. And of course, they were coming from all over the world. Some of the Boy Scouts from Latin America, from countries, from Arab countries where things are not very well. They're accustomed. They made little boats. They save each other and so forth. So, a country like in Japan, you don't make decisions. You don't. But in the Netherlands, you make a little bit more of decisions. That's it. In fact, you don't expect that. So making a decision, it was really not a choice for the Minister of Health to say, you decide. In fact, you cannot decide which vaccine you get. Let me remind everybody, you cannot decide, I don't want AstraZeneca, I want Moderna. That's not possible, not yet, maybe in the future. So even the decisions are not there. There is one more thing that I think we have to think is what happened with the issue of our conscience, our, how do we avoid guilt in this thing? Because this guy is going to get killed. I mean, this guy is going to feel guilty probably if he would have made the decision not to stop, and if he made the decision yes to stop. Yes. So the guilt issue is also a reason not to make decisions. And the Minister of Health in the Netherlands make a decision to stop administering the AstraZeneca for the following reason, if I understand. You see, if he decides yes to go ahead and save a lot of people, some people will die out of blood clots. and he will have a causal responsibility of being his decision. Now, if you make the decision to stop administering the vaccine, then it's up to the people not to get sick. They could stay home, yes, in the toilet seat and not move there for the next 2 months. That could also be a way. There are a lot of people we know who are not even seeing anybody for the last year and a half, zero, nobody, and they don't get sick. That's for sure. So in theory, there is a cut in the causal line that takes from what he does to that effect to the death of people out of COVID because they were not vaccinated was cut. But it's not true. It happens all in his head. He has no good decision, and his decision, in my opinion, and we talked about it 2 weeks ago, it's a bad one because more people will probably die out of his decision. But it doesn't matter. Nobody. I wouldn't like to be in his shoes.
Any of the available courses of action was an undesirable one in this sense, wasn't it? But I don't want to complicate matters even more, but you mentioned here all sorts of different sufferings that are involved in this process, because of course the most salient part is the possibility of the illness or the blood clots and the sickness and the pain and even death entailed in that. But then there are all the other suffering, but the sophisticated, subtle sufferings that have to do with guilt and regret that you just mentioned, that have to do with all the other consequences of postponing vaccination or not achieving the original goals in vaccination. So I think in a way the calculus is so sophisticated, it's almost impossible for an individual to make it and to be comfortable with the result of his calculations. Because it's guilt all over. There's guilt for the minister who decides to go along, the guilt for the minister who decides to stop vaccinating, and there's guilt for the individuals that decide to take or not take the vaccine with the consequences this has for others. So I think it's really a perfect storm in terms of algia and suffering and decision making.
Well, not only for the people who make the decision, but who those who advise the decision. And I'm not talking about the minister. I'm talking about a cousin. I'm talking about a friend. I'm talking about somebody who worked with you. I'm talking about a newspaper article. I'm talking about somebody in Facebook. It doesn't matter. And then these people are making. I was, in Serbia. They bought 15 million vaccines for 8 million people, but only a quarter of the people wanted to get vaccination. The others do not believe in vaccines. And they talk about vaccines as if it was a god you believe in. There is nothing to believe about. It works or it doesn't work. But this is exactly what we're talking about. Now, if some of the people in Serbia who did not get the vaccine, the family members who told them do not get the vaccine and they die, well, they could tell themselves, no, well, anyway, they would have died. It's better to die from this than from the vaccine. But the truth is, you don't want to be in the shoes either. So it's really a high time now. It's the high noon moment, yes, to make decisions, and we are not prepared. We are out of practice making decisions. We talked about it a few weeks ago when we talked about the infantilization. Yes, when we say that the state treat us or the players treat us as children. This is part of the system. This is what we're talking about. And disillusionism is saying this is the result. If you want to sleepwalk, there is a price. And remember also that your sleepwalk is also part of a sink. Yes, there is a sleepwalking peace that you have to maintain. Yes, by you behaving like the rest. So there is a balance, always a balance, and you don't always or almost never control that balance.
complicated but fascinating, nevertheless. We will get back to these subjects and others because I think it's far from over. But for now, thank you. See you next time.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.